I'm going to have to put mattresses all over the walls in this office or something.
You won't be able to sleep it like that. You'll fall off.
Well, maybe I just need to be in a padded room altogether. Maybe the mattresses.
Yeah, I think I'd be with you on that one.
Yeah. Maybe, see if they offer roommate privileges at the local insane asylum. Okay, so
why don't you kick it off again?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Hey everyone, it's Elliot.
And Todd. Welcome to Two Designers Walk Into a Bar, an ongoing conversation about pop culture and iconic design. Everyone says that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
But if that were true, copyright law wouldn't need to exist.
We're going to be discussing a couple of items that could be called homages.
Or could be called unfair or even unauthorized use. But we'll leave that up to you.
Today we're talking about a Swatch poster from the 80s and the Disneyland Memorial Orgy, two projects with colorful artwork and equally colorful backstories.
So place your order for a rainbow paradise because we're drawing unwanted attention once again here in the bar.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. We are talking about some interesting projects today, two things that have borrowed from other things and maybe made them their own. Maybe they didn't. It's up for you to decide, right, Elliot?
Absolutely. So, Todd, let's start with you, because I think maybe I would say both of the works of art we brought with us to the bar today are famous and infamous at the same time. So I think what we should do is let's let the listeners decide which side of the fence, let's say, or side of the aisle, or side of the bar. How about that?
There we go.
That these pieces fall on, more on the famous side or the infamous side. Why don't you tell us about what you brought with you to the bar today? Because I see that you have a tube there. What's inside the tube?
I do. A beautiful 1986 poster for Swatch watches designed by Paula Scher, one of my favorite designers of all time.
Mine too.
And you know, this was done back in the day, like I said, 1986. Kind of a little bit in the heart of New Wave time, which we've spoken about before. And I think some of that DIY-ness will come back up in here. So if you haven't seen it, check out our website. There's images there of the poster Paula Scher worked on when she had her firm Koppel & Scher. And it is strongly based on a historic tourism poster by Herbert Matter. Swiss tourism poster, I should say. That's pretty important to the look of it. And because Swatch is a Swiss company. So
does the poster have a lot of holes in it?
Oh, man. Wouldn't that be a funny poster if you were just advertising Swiss tourism, but there's just holes everywhere? The poster that Paula Scher's poster parodies is from 1934. And as I said, it's for the Swiss Tourism Bureau. And it is an obvious parody. It's not like you're going to look at that and go, she might have maybe ripped that off. No, it's an obvious parody. In so much, though, that she contacted AIGA and Matter's estate to seek permission to make this homage to them. And I think it's kind of cool. I think it's a small...
Hold on.
Okay, all right. Sorry, I was rolling.
Yeah,
thank you for stopping me.
You were. And
I was going downhill, man.
Oh, this whole episode's been going downhill for a while. So I think we need to press pause here for a second, because not every listener knows what AIGA is. And I'm curious, even though I do know what AIGA is, why Paula Scher felt the need to call this organization. So could you quickly maybe expand on that a little bit?
Well, I can't expand too much on all the reasons that she called, but AIGA is the Association for Graphic Designers. They house a large design archive. They award medals to luminaries in our field. So kind of the court of graphic design, if you will. So my guess is that she approached them to say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. How does that kind of fall ethically?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if it was more of an ethical conversation. Because it's not like AIGA owns the copyright to it, like you were saying Matter's estate does.
Yeah. It was, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. It's a clear parody. What's kind of your ruling on that as sort of a impartial, objective body? And then, of course, as I said, she contacted Matter's estate. So the poster is actually credited to Koppel and Scher with Herbert Matter. So she covered all the bases on this one. And I think that's what makes this poster for Swatch so smart and witty. It's not a direct copy, but it's combining original and recognizable elements from the Swiss Tourist Bureau poster. And it was created during a time, like I said, in the 1980s, when designers were starting to appreciate and revive and pull from design history. And what this did is it brought a little bit more eclectic feel, maybe like a retro revival aesthetic. So it does have that DIY aesthetic, like I mentioned, from the New Wave period. So I know you know what it is, Elliot. Let me describe it for our listeners real quick.
Yeah, please do.
And in describing, I'm basically describing the original poster with some modifications too. So it's a large smiling head at the top. It's positioned diagonally, coming in from the left, as was a large smiling head from Herbert Matter's poster. It's not the same head, but pretty close model. It has a disconnected forearm that also enters from the left side, and it's diagonal. And it is wearing 2 Swatch watches like you're supposed to do back in the 80s. You just had to load up your forearm with Swatch. That's
why your forearm's so long.
That's right. That's because it can hold more watches. The brand name Swatch crosses the wrist on the diagonal. And the background of this poster features mountains and skiers, definitely referencing Matter's original backdrop. And it's colorful, it's playful, and it is clearly an unmistakable homage to the Swiss Tourist Bureau poster. So
yeah, because people go to Switzerland, they go there to ski. If you say Switzerland to someone, they think skiing typically.
Right. And so let me ask you, Elliot, the Swiss style, obviously, which Matter was leading proponent of, modernism, how would you describe that? Because this poster certainly captures the Swiss style as well.
Type-driven, very laid out on a grid, but then the grid isn't oriented to the way the poster is trimmed, so it's maybe a grid rotated at a slight angle, like 10 degree, 20 degree angle. So imagine if you took something that you laid out for non-designers. Imagine something that you laid out using whatever software you use, could be Canva, could be whatever. And then imagine you printed it out and you put it on a tabletop and you were getting ready to maybe trim it out. And then you sort of twisted it with your hand, like you twisted it from, let's say, midnight, if that's straight up and down, to like 11 o'clock. So you sort of twist it counterclockwise a little bit. And then you cut it out in a smaller square that is oriented vertically. So it's almost like it's pasted inside another shape. So everything's laid out, but it's laid out a little bit with a twist, because that adds some visual energy and excitement to the content.
Right.
That otherwise would kind of be benign. Yeah, it's fun. It's energetic.
And I mean, we're both design history nerds too, so we can see the influence of European constructivism within that as well. But the Swiss were known for their organization and design, and that's the inspiration for this poster. So I started by saying Paula Scher is one of my favorites, and she's one of my favorites because she just is always surprising us. She has this eclectic way of telling a smart, witty story. She's a renowned designer, artist, and educator. She is now a partner for Pentagram. Well, let me say that differently. Since 1991, she's been a partner for Pentagram. But she got her start in New York working for Random House, and then later moved to CBS Records in kind of the heyday of album cover design. So she has been known to design more than 150 album covers a year. So,
jeez, that's one a day.
I know, yeah. Yeah, I mean, crazy, right?
Yeah.
So she left CBS in 1982 to form a partnership. Well, she started by doing independent sort of freelance work. In 1984, she formed Koppel and Scher, who obviously is credited for this poster. So again, her style pulls from a lot of different influences, and she ain't afraid to do some funkiness with the typography and with the messaging. And she knows when to keep it sort of clean and simple too. So just all around, I love what she does. It's always a surprise.
Mm-hmm. I'll agree with that. Yeah.
And all right, so what are Swatch watches? Is there anybody out there that may not know what a Swatch is? We've talked about them, if you remember, on a past episode. I think we actually brought it up on our flags episode.
I think you're right. I think
it was. And now I'm trying to think like, wow, why did we talk about Swatch also? Probably
because we talked about the Swiss flag. Remember, you had brought up the Swiss flag.
I did, but yeah, anyway, I'll have to go back and re-listen to that episode to figure out how we connected
folks, we do not have all, in spite of what you may think, we do not have all of our episodes committed to memory. But one episode I remember specifically was episode 76, which is our New Wave Gets Fashionable episode.
Yes.
And we talk about Swatch watches and checkerboard vans and things like that.
Yes,
so this was part of a whole funky, fun new wave ensemble. But what we're talking about is when Swatch was, Swatch is still around today. It's still a major player today. But this was when it was pretty new. This was when it was really debuting, right?
It exactly was. It was in the early 80s when they first debuted, and Swatch watches were designed to be disposable, funky, low cost. They were plastic and they were collectible. It was, you wore them as fashion, as you just said about our New Wave episode. And this perfectly fit with that early mid-80s New Wave aesthetic, moving away from kind of the heavy seriousness that was around in the late 70s. And as Cyndi Lauper said, girls just want to have fun. We all wanted to have fun in the mid-80s.
I think the other thing, so relating it back to the poster for a second, Swatch watches were really the first, certainly watches I can think of, or definitely a non-luxury watch.
Yeah.
That had bold graphics on them, very colorful. Yeah. The bands were printed in wild graphics. The faces had wild graphics. All the parts were interchangeable. We talk more about this in this other episode. But they were sort of the Apple Watch before Apple Watch came along, when you could swap out bands, swap out faces,
just gonna say,
all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the technology of an Apple Watch, of course.
Not at all.
But the idea of customizing something that was utilitarian and having multiples of it. And while watches traditionally had been seen as a status symbol because they were expensive, this sort of flipped it on its ear. And they were seen as kind of a status symbol, but it was the funkier status. Anyway, check out Swatches if you haven't already. Plenty of choices out there, and they're super cool. But I guess the question that we might have is, why would Paula Scher do a poster promoting watches based on a poster from 1934 that promoted Swiss tourism? And, good question. Herbert Matter was really kind of a forefather of the modernist movement, and he experimented at the time in the 30s with both photography as well as phototype and hand type. So he was really one of the early folks that mixed together imagery with the typography and collage and things like that. So his poster reflects that, and of course Paula Scher's takes it to another level too.
Yeah, can I just add something real quick?
Yeah.
So I think in our age of not only digital layout, but also web-based tools and making things very easy to pull in images and rotate them and layer type on top of them, boom, 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 boom. This was 100 years ago or close to it. So what he was doing was very, very cutting edge. It involved dark rooms and pushing print techniques, and it was all done by hand. You know, it's one thing to be able to sketch it out on paper, but it's another thing, certainly 100 years ago, to make that thing, to get what's in your head out and on a page, and then another thing to produce it at scale, right? To make a poster out of it. Right. I mean, that's no mean feat. So we definitely need to put some links to some of Matter's other work on the page for this episode, I think, really just to show what he was doing, because I would say someone coming out of art school today, you know, with maybe a few rare exceptions, if you took their Mac away or whatever, I don't think they would have any idea of how to produce this.
I agree, and that's not slamming the work that they are producing.
No, it's just an evolution of a century of technology and different techniques.
Right. So I think that would be an interesting experiment if we said, hey, recreate this, but you can't use any technology. You can use a
Xerox machine. How about that?
Yeah, and you can snap some photos and you can cut some stuff. But getting back to how that connects to Paula Scher, as I've said a couple times, I'm just gushing probably a lot about her because...
Are you working on your Valentine? Are you going to drop a little something in the mail to Paula Scher?
I should. If only I thought she would read it, I would. But so Paula, give me a jingle. But again, you can tell she has such an appreciation of our history, and she references that. And I think that's genius because I think it keeps things fresh because you got to know the rules to break the rules, and she certainly does.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a fan of Paula as well as this poster, but not everybody was, as you can probably guess, because it was an obvious parody. And in the design world, you know, that kind of can be seen as a cheap shot. And this was the opposite of that. And as a matter of fact, there's a guy named J. Abbott Miller in a book, which is good, and I recommend it, called Borrowed Design. It's from 1993. J. Abbott Miller, he criticized the Swatch poster by saying, okay, I'm going to quote now.
Okay.
The contextual displacement affected from the Swiss tourism to Swatch watches is not thought-provoking. So I'm like, you know, I think, I respect J. Abbott, respect J. Abbott a lot. And as you had told me, he is also a pentagram partner, but I think he kind of missed the point on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Parody is an artistic technique, and how parody pays off is being extreme. It's the thing that you look at and you go, oh, I know where that came from. Isn't that another layer of fun that I'm adding to it? And, no one's going to confuse a Swiss tourism poster from 1934 with a Swatch poster from 1980. So I think it's great. I think we celebrate it. We love the idea of bringing the history forward, and it was exposing people to some of the designers paving the way for modernism too. So anyway, and just wrapping this up, I want to say again, Paula, love you. And the Swatch poster is just one example. On our website, we'll post some other imagery. They also did an ad campaign that is purely tongue-in-cheek, and I won't do it justice by describing it here, but you should see it. I imagine it was pretty controversial at the time because it takes off of sort of the 1950s Leave It to Beaver vibe in the 1980s, which was pretty different.
Yeah, that was really when I remember being a kid in the 80s and watching Leave It to Beaver, and the degree to which we rolled our eyes at that. I mean, look at Back to the Future, arguably one of, if not the most popular movie of the 80s, and how it lampooned the 50s.
Yeah. And I think it was, I'm trying to think back. Obviously, I was an adult then. I think there was a sweet spot. We obviously knew that it was a parody of things from the 50s, but it was a bit of a sweet spot because I wasn't around in the 50s, so I don't know. I didn't have any objection to that. Mm-hmm. But anyway, let me just wrap up by saying, again, the work that Paula Scher does, not just for Swatch, but check out her entire portfolio of work. It's amazing. Her risk-taking spirit and design innovation made her one of those defining voices of graphic design.
You know what, Todd? You just got me thinking. I also love Paula Scher's work and her risk-taking spirit.
Yeah, great, right? Makes me energized to get out there and do something, man.
I couldn't agree more. So here's a thought.
Okay.
Go on and get out there and do something. Bring me another glass filled with colorful spirits and maybe some fruit on a plastic sword.
I need to watch what I say.
I think you're doing a great job.
We'll be back. Hi. We want to take a moment to mention that if you're enjoying this episode, we have an archive of topics ranging from the Olympics to movie posters,
Think Ghostbusters.
iconic images,
Think Bigfoot.
punk music,
The Ramones.
Saturday morning cartoons,
The Pink Panther.
and failed products like OK Soda. Visit our website at twodesignerswalkintoabar.com for full episode notes and visuals, the latest blog content, and to sign up for our newsletter.
Follow us on social media. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Find the links on our website or search using the phrase "Two Designers Walk Into a Bar."
Most importantly, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps more people like you find podcasts like this.
And tell a friend about us. Send them a link to our podcast from your listening platform of choice.
And if you're inclined, buy our merchandise. Stickers, coasters, magnets, t-shirts. We're designers. We make good stuff, and it helps support the show.
Get in touch. Use the contact form on our website or send an email to hello@twodesignerswalkintoabar.com.
We read every message we get. Honest.
And we're available for speaking gigs. Email us to learn more.
Okay, now back to the bar.
Okay, Todd, so we're back. Thank you for taking action.
Yep.
Capitalizing on some of that energy and, quite frankly, helping me quench my thirst. I appreciate that.
Anytime, of course.
Oh, good. Maybe after we wrap up this next
time.
part.
I
Yeah,
have to watch what I'm saying.
You're a slow learner, I think.
Saying.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
right.
I have brought with me, you might have seen me lugging in a framed poster. I've hidden it under the table.
Okay,
because your before we get into what I brought to the bar today, I have a confession to make, and it leads into why I brought this piece today. Okay?
Okay. All right.
But I want to start with a question.
All right.
What's your opinion on Disney? I mean, have you been to Disney World or Disneyland?
I have. I've never been to Disneyland, but I have been to Disney World multiple times as a kid and as an adult. And, I understand the world they play in. I do have an appreciation of their care that they put into everything, but I'm also eyes wide open that, it's kind of a little on, the sap side.
I will confess, I have never in my life set foot on a Disney property.
Really?
Never.
Really?
Never. And I've never had the desire to. I have always looked at, now I think Disney is an amazing dream machine. I grew up going to the theater to see Bambi, Pinocchio, Dumbo, etc., Snow White. I've seen all that stuff. It's not like my brother and I were kept from Disney or that Disney was some sort of big secret or something. But I could never, until I became an adult, really put my finger on why I always looked at Disney a little bit askance. You know, I could never quite reconcile, I guess would be the word, why it always made me a little bit uneasy.
Really?
And I think as I've become an adult, what I've realized is this is just my opinion. We're probably going to get a little bit of blowback hate on what I'm about to say, but I'll say it. I think Disney exploits children's emotions to make a shitload of money. I think it is a highly manipulative organization. I've always thought that. And I think with their acquisition of, Pixar and Marvel and all of this other stuff, I think it just hoovers up a lot of this joy to just really commercialize and exploit it. So, and for, I say that, I'll go see a Pixar film. My son growing up, we would let him watch. I'm not anti-Disney in that way.
You just have that point of view.
Yeah. I'm not going to travel to Florida to give them thousands of dollars. I will give them a movie ticket, or maybe buy a DVD or stream something or whatever. But that's about as far as my Disney engagement is going to go. So when I happened upon the Disneyland Memorial Orgy, I fell in love with Disney because this piece exists. I should really say I fell in love with this piece because it lampoons the very thing that kind of makes me uneasy and a bit I feel like I found a kindred spirit. I feel like they saw Disney for what I see Disney as, and they went a step further and completely exploited that. So, are you ready for me to pull the frame out from under the bar?
Yeah. Show me. All right. Show me what you got. All right. I'm very curious about this.
All right. Go ahead and take a look.
Oh my. Oh my.
Have you ever seen this before?
No. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I bet somebody got a call from some lawyers.
Okay. Well, we'll get into that. We'll get into this. And naturally for listeners, we are going to post this artwork on our episode page. I absolutely love this artwork. So let's describe. Do you want me to describe it? Should we, or do you want to describe it?
If you can describe it, I'm. There are a million scenes of Disney characters loading up this poster, and in each one, something very un-Disney is happening.
Yes, it's sort of like if Hieronymus Bosch had been an artist at Disney, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you're excited. So you're worried we're going to get sued, probably.
I know. I guess, I have to say, given your point of view, I can see why this would have caught your attention, and I can appreciate the commentary on that. But it's something.
It's a lot to take in, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
it's almost like
I'm using that phrase on purpose.
It's like if Robert Crumb was a Disney artist.
Yeah, I think it's worse than even that. But yeah, it's very R. Crumb. It's very sort of Hieronymus Bosch. So what this is for folks who are listening and not near a computer, not looking at it or not familiar with it, the Disneyland Memorial Orgy is basically, the way I would describe it, is a detailed, chaotic, and intentionally shocking illustration that is a total satire of the squeaky clean Disney image.
I'll say.
So, so the Disney characters featured in this: Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Daisy, Goofy, Pluto, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Dumbo, Cinderella, Alice, Lady and the Tramp, among others. They're all engaged in various sexual, violent, and drug-related happenings, shall we say.
I'll say, yeah.
So where did this thing come from, right? So, well, let me describe some of the scenes depicted in greater detail and then we'll talk about where this came from. So,
okay.
Specifically, Snow White is getting assaulted by 5 dwarves, and the two more are engaging in sex with each other nearby. Mickey Mouse is exposing himself in the center of the scene. Dumbo is flying overhead, and he's taking a dump on some of the different characters. It's great. I love it so much. So Goofy, he's having Goofy's having sex with Minnie Mouse on a discarded mattress, and what I love about that is her head is resting on a cash register, and the cash register says $2, and then there's a couple bucks sitting on. So she's basically a $2 whore. That's what I just love this so much. It's so great. So where did this thing come from? So originally it was published, and it was only in black and white. So the main artwork that we're going to publish is in color, but the original was a black and white image, and it was in this underground satire magazine called The Realist, and it was in their May 1967 issue. Okay?
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm speechless. I'm seeing more and more stuff in here.
All right, so we'll yeah. Oh, I bet you are. Yeah, this should be on the Sistine Chapel ceiling. I think they need to repaint that and put this up there.
It's so wrong, so wrong.
So let's talk about where did this come from. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll get into a little bit of the cultural impact. Okay, sound good? Or will you need therapy before we finish this up?
Well, both can exist at the same time.
Okay. Yeah. So The Realist, this magazine. Todd, I don't understand why you don't love this, because believe it or not, the artwork that you are looking at, it was born from the spirit and the bowels, as it turns out, of Mad Magazine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was established, the magazine was established by a guy named Paul Krassner, and he was working for Mad when he launched The Realist in 1958.
Okay. Huh.
Okay. And you mentioned R. Crumb earlier, and I think that's important here, because when you think about Mad, and we've talked about Mad before in this podcast, and we love Mad, Mad was really going more for mainstream humor, right?
Yeah.
It was making fun of mainstream movies or musicians or TV shows or whatever. But The Realist was more underground, right? It went into more uncensored social and political or religious satire, and it really became more of a voice of the 60s counterculture. So if you think about Mad was sort of social criticism or pop culture criticism, but it was still acceptable. Like, it wasn't scandalous. You know, if you were caught with a Mad magazine in school when you should be reading your textbook, you know, the Mad might be taken away. I think if you were caught with a Realist, you'd be suspended. You know, in the 50s or 60s.
Mad Magazine wouldn't show Snow White's nipple, I think.
No, it would not. It would not. They had standards, Todd. But The Realist, the other thing The Realist did, it combined extreme satire, like the Disney orgy that we're talking about, with serious journalism, and they actually had contributions from icons like Norman Mailer, Ken Kesey, and Joseph Heller. So they had a great motto. I love this motto. Irreverence is our only sacred cow.
Makes sense, yeah.
And it was actually distributed nationally until 2001. So it ran for a long time, ran for 45 years, 50 years, you know, and is often seen as the father of the underground press. So that's where...
Now, did you know about this?
No.
Did you know about The Realist?
I had maybe heard of it in passing. I maybe knew about the name, but I've never, to the best of my knowledge, I've never seen a physical issue of it. Have you?
No, it doesn't. It's not ringing any bells for me.
So... who was Paul Krassner? Let's talk about there were 2 artists behind this specific piece. Aside, let's say 3 if you want to include Walt Disney. But let's talk about...
I don't think you should.
Yeah, but let's talk about the other 2 guys who maybe are a little less famous. So Paul Krassner, the publisher, editor, whatever you want to refer to him as, founder, I suppose, of The Realist. Like I said, he came from Mad Magazine, and he was this counterculture figure. he was a member of Ken Kesey's Merry Pranksters. You remember the bus that drove around?
Yeah, of course,
that Jack Kerouac's buddy was the bus driver for.
Yeah.
And he was also a co-founder of the Yippies. So that was this counterculture group in the 60s, kind of a counterpoint to the hippies a little bit. And he was the satirist who was known for extreme irreverence. Like I said earlier, the tagline, "Irreverence is our only sacred cow." I love this. In doing some homework on this guy, and we really need to do, I think, an episode on him, because he had an FBI file. The FBI was following him.
No way.
And they, in a letter in his FBI file, he was called a raving unconfined nut. That's what the FBI called him. So this is great. So like I said, he coined the term yippie, and he was famous for his wit. So when he was called the father of the underground press, like I said, the Realist was called, his response to that was, "I demand a paternity test." How do you know the kid's mine? And so he lived from 1932 to 2019. So he was he wasn't even 30 years old when he started the Realist. So I love this. I don't know. This totally is I think it's a little bit of my Gen X sensibilities to some degree. This is totally DIY, totally ironic detachment, cultural criticism, totally in my wheelhouse. Okay, so the other person involved with this is an illustrator named Wally Wood.
Is that his real name?
So, yeah, well, sort of. He went by some different names, but yeah, I mean, basically, it wasn't like it was a pseudonym or something like that.
Okay, all right, yeah.
He was a renowned comic book artist and writer. And he, Todd, was a founding cartoonist of Mad magazine in 1952.
No
Yeah. And prior to that, if people know about the history of Mad, before Mad magazine became Mad magazine, they were cranking out comics. This was in the pre-code era, before the decency code. So he was doing comic book illustration for EC Comics. Things like weird science, weird fantasy. He also designed the red costume for Daredevil for Marvel.
Oh, no kidding. Huh.
And again, I am just like with Krassner, I am greatly editing this guy's biography. This guy also deserves a whole episode unto himself. He worked across all different types of media, comics, advertising. Todd, he did the trading cards for Mars Attacks.
Really?
That all the characters for the Tim Burton movie were based on. So he did that. He did album covers. I mean, he did a bunch of stuff. So William Gaines, who was the publisher at EC, later, as we all know, the publisher of Mad.
Mad.
Yeah. He referred to Wood as, quote, "our most brilliant and yet troubled artist." And well, it's funny and not funny, because obviously he made amazing work like this, but tragically his life ended because he took it himself after a series of health ailments.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean,
just troubled, wasn't he?
Yeah. But you know, he's exorcising the demons through his work, and
yeah, I'll say.
Yeah, but with the Disneyland Memorial Orgy, I'm glad he did it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you asked about a lawsuit. So I found an interview where Krassner was asked about this. And so I'm going to read you what his response was when the journalist asked him this question.
Okay.
He said, "The Disneyland Memorial Orgy center spread became so popular that I decided to publish it as a poster in 1967. The Disney Corporation considered a lawsuit, but realized that the Realist had no real assets, and besides, why bother causing themselves any further public embarrassment? They took no action against me, never telling me to cease and desist."
No way.
Believe it or not.
Oh,
so they, I think, were banking on the fact, like you and I were sitting here, neither of us had heard of this thing. We had never heard of the Realist.
Right.
I consider both of us to be fairly plugged in to this sort of stuff. And so Disney, basically by ignoring it, was hoping they would bury it.
Wow.
But here we are today. So how did this thing come back? So that was 1967. Yet here we are many, many, many decades later talking about this. What has happened more recently? So there is a French company called Boom Art, and they will do things like release limited edition runs, sort of like Supreme. They'll have limited editions of skateboard decks, surfboards, that sort of thing, and they'll release them as collections. So one of their collections was the Disneyland Memorial Orgy on a series of 6 skateboard decks. And then they also had 6 surfboards that they put out as well.
Oh my.
So each of these, if you think about them stacked vertically next to one another, almost like spines of books, right?
Yeah.
Like books on a bookshelf. The artwork was then printed across these 6 decks or these 6 surfboards. And then you'll love this. This is even better. So originally I mentioned that the artwork was black and white.
Right.
So they had to reproduce this on these boards. Obviously, compared to 50 odd years ago, production techniques are much, much, much better now.
Yeah.
And so you'll find older versions of this that are hand colored perhaps. There's a black light version that came out, which is pretty amazing. But the new version was actually colored by a disgruntled former Disney employee. So the colors are much more vibrant. They have a modern twist. I'm sure this person knew to dial in all of the colors to get it as on point as possible with all these characters.
Oh, my.
So, like I said, this wasn't a limited edition when it was released. And originally the decks went for about $662 US dollars. This was a few years ago.
Wow.
But now they're gone. So they're probably much more valuable today. You know, they sold out, as you can imagine, very quickly. And like I said, in addition to skateboard decks, there's surfboard. And so if you can track these down, I mean, you're really, I'm sure one is valuable, but really the whole set is, for obvious reasons, that's what you want to hang on your wall.
Can I ask you a quick question about that?
Absolutely.
So I know you're a skater. I'm not.
Yeah.
Is that an astronomical price for a board, or is that a little higher than normal for a board?
It's definitely, so it's not a fair comparison to make because the boards are never meant to be, the decks are not meant to be used. Like you would never use these.
Okay, so they are works of art.
Yes,
and
it just
limited
happens
edition.
to be in the form of a
gotcha.
deck. So you're going to hang these on a wall vertically next to one another. So
Gotcha.
a typical skateboard deck is about $50. So 50 times 6 is 300. So this is about twice. So this is roughly a little more than $100 a deck.
Yeah.
But most decks, unless it's some kind of classic and you reissue it for like a pro skater or something, most decks in general are limited runs. So, but you know, increase it. Like MoMA sells decks now that have, you know, art from Keith Haring on it or Andy Warhol that are, of course, authorized by their estates. So this is another example of that, just from a French company. But I want to mention real quick, so some of the cultural impact. You obviously had a little bit of shock and awe when I produced this, which is what I was hoping for. And I just love how this totally just gives it to Disney because, I don't know, man, I think Disney deserves it a little bit. And if people want to fight me on that, I will meet you out in the alley behind the bar. I'm fine with that. I'll bring one of these decks and I'll come out of the shadows swinging.
Right.
Cultural impact. So this piece really sort of flipped that Disney wholesome fantasy into this, you know, grotesque adult satire, right?
Right.
And it totally embodied the rebellious ethos of this magazine, of the Realist.
Yeah.
Like I said, it ended up going from this black and white piece to a black light poster, and it was so popular, it was pirated all over the place. So, you know, Disney, like I said, they didn't go after it, but they were certainly aware of it. And so, just as we wrap this up, the Disneyland Memorial Orgy, it's one of the most infamous pieces of underground satire. I love it so much, and I'm so sad it took me this long before I learned of it. So it stirs conversations about censorship, corporate critique, as we've mentioned, and really the power of art to challenge norms, which I think is great. I mean, I think a skateboard deck is the perfect medium for this because it totally dials into parody, spoof, counterculture, DIY, these things you've been talking about. It's pitch perfect in terms of both the artwork and the medium. And Wally Wood and Paul Krassner, their collaboration is really this time capsule of 1960s counterculture, right?
I would give you
and
that,
it continues to inspire reinterpretations today. Like I said, skateboards and surfboards. Yeah. So it's really going to the street culture crowd. And we've had a past episode on street culture where we talk about Ed Big Daddy Roth. We talk about Santa Cruz and the Screaming Hand.
Yeah.
This is totally in that same wheelhouse.
Yep.
And I just think it really captures this rebellious spirit of taking it to the man, taking it to corporate America a little bit. And, if I probably dig around maybe somewhere in my retirement fund somewhere, maybe I do own some Disney stock. I don't know, but I don't even care. I would rather own this.
Well, that's one thing. If they're making money for you, that's a different
but like I said, it's
being a patron.
The money's being made on the tears of children. So I don't know, Todd. You tell me if you think that's ethical.
Well, this is a whole other discussion for another time, but it's a lot of tears of adults as well that goes with that. Those children grow up and still stay in the cult.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the power of Disney, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we discussed some very interesting artwork today. I think we can say that. And one piece asked for permission, and the other one just sort of took it.
True. Both took advantage of pop culture familiarity, though, to be successful.
That reminds me. While we were talking, I took advantage of your open tab by texting our bartender.
What? Which is exactly the sort of success I've become quite familiar with.
Well, just let me know if you want something, too.
How about half the bar tab?
No problem. Will you accept charm and good looks as payment?
Can't wait for your meme coin, man. See you next time, everyone. Thanks, Elliot.